So, Meghalaya is in the middle of this really devastating drug crisis. But is the policy they have in place actually doing anything? Today, we're going to break down a critical analysis that asks a pretty tough question. Is the state's war on drugs really fighting the war, or is it just chasing shadows?
And that's the big question, right? Is the government just chasing shadows? This really gets to the heart of the critique we're digging into today. It kind of sets the stage, asking if all this effort is genuinely aimed at solving the problem, or if the focus is somewhere else entirely. And look, the stakes here are incredibly high. We're not just talking about policy papers. Behind all this are real people, real families, real communities just being torn apart. And yeah, you see the headlines about some arrests here and there, but the crisis itself, it's not going away. And that's exactly why this kind of scrutiny is so important.
All right, so where do we even start with this critique? Well, it all kicks off with a really fundamental question about the current strategy. Who exactly is being targeted in this war on drugs?
And this slide, wow, it lays out the core criticisms so clearly. The whole argument is that law enforcement is focusing on the bottom of the pyramid, right? The users, the small-time peddlers, basically the people who are easiest to catch. But in the meantime, those powerful, almost invisible networks that are running the whole show, they seem to be getting overlooked.
And this quote, this really hits hard. It spells out the consequence of that strategy. It's not just an observation. You could almost read it as an accusation. It's saying that while the foot soldiers get arrested, the kingpins are just operating with impunity, like they have nothing to fear at all. You know, this brings us to another really crucial part of the debate. The critique isn't just about who is being targeted, but how the problem is being treated. It really boils down to this fundamental question: should we be punishing users, or should we be trying to help them?
Okay, so to really get the alternative, we need to talk about this term, harm reduction. This is a total mind shift. Instead of just seeing drug use as a crime, it treats it as a public health issue. So the goal isn't just about punishment, it's about reducing the damage and, actually offering people a path to get better.
And when you compare the two, the difference in outcomes is pretty stark. This analysis basically argues that the punitive approach, well, it just fills up prisons and is, quote, doomed to fail because it never asks why people get addicted. The public health approach, on the other hand, is all about providing services, addressing the addiction itself, and putting rehabilitation front and center. So this brings us full circle, right, back to the top of the pyramid. If the problem on the street level is being tackled with the wrong philosophy, what about the people pulling the strings? Let's follow the money and ask, where are the kingpins?
And that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The analysis highlights this massive gap, a real lack of high-profile arrests. We hear about seizures, sure, but where are the financiers, the big syndicates, the cross-border players who are making all the money? The real question is, why aren't we seeing them?
Look, taking down these kingpins is obviously not easy. It seems like you need a very specific playbook. First, you need really sophisticated intelligence to untangle their complex operations. Then you need serious political will, the courage to go after powerful people. And finally, you need all the different government agencies to actually work together seamlessly. So that leads us right here. If we know the playbook, but the kingpins are still out there, what does that tell you? The unavoidable conclusion is that one, or maybe all, of those key ingredients, intelligence, political will, or coordination, is just missing from the equation. But, this analysis isn't just about pointing fingers. It's also about finding a way forward. So let's switch gears and look at the actual demands for a whole new strategy. Okay, so here are the three big recommendations on the table. First, a formal shift to a public health policy. That means prioritizing rehab and harm reduction. Second, create a specialized task force with one single job. Go after the money, the financial networks. And third, and this is huge, public accountability. Make sure everything that task force finds and does is out in the open. And so it all comes down to this. This analysis really presents a fork in the road for Meghalaya's drug policy. Are they going to keep going down the same path, punishing the most visible victims of this crisis? Or are they going to pivot and finally start dismantling the powerful, invisible networks that are profiting from all this suffering? That, right there, is the crucial question.